Before we get into this video, I want to give a shout out to Nickbotic. He's the one who wrote these stories you're about to hear. If you want to read more of his work, make sure you go check out his website. There will be a link in the description. So, over the past 7 months, I've been working for someone I responded to on Craigslist. Well, I'll just explain everything. This seems like an appropriate place to post this. I was scouring the internet for some sort of paying gig. I didn't really care what. Then I came across a post on Craigslist. I had just refreshed the page and there it was. Someone was looking for a person to come by and feed their pets. I assumed they were going out of town or something, so I contacted them and left my number through email. I got a response immediately in the form of a phone call. The caller was a man who explained to me that he was moving out of town and his parents had cats they wanted fed daily. I gave the man my name so he could run me through a cursory background check, and in about 20 minutes I was hired. I went there the next morning to get all the instructions and whatnot, and met the man I'd spoken to on the phone. His name was Ben. Ben explained to me that he was no longer able to care for his parents' cats, and that his parents needed to focus on themselves, so I was being brought on to take care of that. The money would be left on the kitchen table at the end of every week, $200 a week, just to feed some cats. I know, right? In addition to that, money for cat food would be left for me as needed. Then he told me the first thing that I thought was strange. I was to come at exactly 10 a.m. every day and be gone by 10:10 a.m., and I was never, under any circumstances, to interact with his parents. He told me that when I'm in their home, they will be in their chairs in the living room, watching television, and that I was not to disturb them ever. He asked if any of that would be a problem, to which I assured him it wouldn't. He then showed me the area in which the cats eat. There were 4 cats, and where the food was kept. While not rude in the least, he was very adamant that I not explore further in the house, to which I assured him wouldn't be a problem. He ushered me outside and showed me where the spare key was in case the door was ever locked, but he told me that was very unlikely to happen. And with that, he expressed his hope that I could be trusted one last time, shook my hand, and told me to be there at 10 a.m. every day starting tomorrow. If I was ever unable to make it, call and leave a message on their home phone, to which he gave me the number. I shook my head and was on my way. The next day came and I went inside at exactly 10 a.m. I walked into the house and immediately to my right were Ben's parents, sitting in recliners, facing away from me watching some kind of game show. I announced my presence, which they ignored, and made my way to the kitchen. I filled the cat bowls and left. This exact same scenario played out countless times over the next few months. 10 a.m., unreturned hello, feed the cats, leave. On Fridays, I would pick up the small stack of $20 bills on the kitchen table. It was the easiest job I ever had. Then came the inevitable. One day I was running late. I got to the house at 10:08. I entered and apologized to Ben's parents for being late, to which I once again get no response. They just kept sitting in their chairs watching their game show. I went to the kitchen and fed the cats. I looked at my phone, which read 10:11, and walked down the hall towards the front door. When I reached the living room, I jumped and gasped out of shock. Ben's parents were now standing in the dark behind their chairs, completely still, staring directly at me. I apologized for running late and got out of there. Though unnerved, I went back the next day on time, and everything was fine. A few more months went by of nothing strange, and then came the last day I was there. I got there at 10:03, but wasn't worried because I knew I could be out of there by 10:10. The problem came when I was in the kitchen and I heard someone whisper the words, "Help me." It startled me, and I jumped, looking around for the source of the cry for help. I saw no one around, but I heard it again, and then a third time. I began looking around, before realizing I was running behind. I looked at my phone and it was 10:10. My heart sank to my stomach when I looked down the hall and saw Ben's parents for the first time in the light. They were grossly emaciated and pale, looking completely malnourished. They were essentially walking skeletons. I apologized for taking so long and said I'd be on my way, but they just stood there, blocking the way to the front door. I said I would take the back door, which was located in the kitchen, but when I went to open it, it required a key from the inside. Seriously. It was at this point that true panic set in. I looked behind me and the parents were now about half a foot away from the entrance to the kitchen, and I had nowhere else to go except for what I assumed was a door to a pantry. They had blank stares across their faces, and their eyes looked as if the life had left them a long time ago. In a last-ditch effort, I went to the door that I thought was a pantry, and found it to lead to a staircase leading into a basement, with of course no light. As soon as I opened the door, there was a horrid stench that washed over the otherwise clean air I was standing in. I carefully went down the stairs and looked for a window, but they were all nailed shut. I happened to look back up the stairs and the parents were now standing next to each other at the top of the stairs. It was truly horrifying. I pulled out my phone and called 911, not knowing what else to do, and when I explained my situation, they said they would send a car out immediately and to stay on the phone while they connected me to the unit en route. I ran into the dark basement using my phone as a light. It didn't provide too much illumination since I was in the middle of a call, but it was just enough. There were racks of junk that lined the basement, separating it into almost aisles. I went down to check if any of the windows were possibly loose, like I'd be that lucky. Then I turned around and shined the light in front of me, and I was inches away from the parents' lifeless-looking faces. I let out a scream and ran in the other direction, and tripped over something, sending my phone flying from my hand. Of course, it landed face down, so I couldn't find it. I ran back up the stairs and into the kitchen, looking back and seeing the parents standing at the bottom of the stairs, with slight grins on their faces. I ran down the hall to the front door and flung it open, screaming when I saw the cop standing right in front of me. He asked me if I was the one that called as I pushed past him to get outside, and told him I was. I looked in the window and saw the parents sitting in their chairs, watching their game show. I explained that these crazy old people had me trapped in their house and were chasing me around. The cop went in to talk to the parents and look around while I sat in the cop car. He came back out about 5 minutes later and asked me if I was sure that someone was chasing me. I said yes, I was absolutely sure, that it was the two old people that lived there. He informed me that the people that lived there, the people in the chairs, had been dead for quite some time. I asked him what the hell the smell in the basement was, and he said there was another body down there. Backup showed up. I gave them my statement and explained how I'd been coming there every day for months and months to feed the cats. I told them to call Ben, the homeowner's son. I gave them the number, and it was disconnected. I found out a few days later that the body in the basement was Ben. What I don't get is who's been paying me. As a police officer, I've seen some shit. Some outrageous, some hilarious, some disgusting. Those are the three categories, besides not being noteworthy at all, that I would group calls in. Every now and again, though, we'll get a call for something I can only describe as unbelievable. I'm going to share what I would consider to be the most outlandish, strangest call I've ever been a part of. I was on the tail end of my break when a call came through for a break-in just a few blocks from where I was. The neighborhood this alleged break-in was happening in was one that's populated with a lot of somewhat dilapidated, albeit very large houses. At one point, this neighborhood was upper class. Now, sadly, the properties aren't worth much at all, and many of them were abandoned. The ones that were still occupied were inhabited by elderly people that had lived there since before the neighborhood went to shit. The 911 call had come from the landline of an elderly woman. I'll call... I don't know. Oh, in the spirit of the break-in, I'll call her Robin. Robin had called the dispatcher and reported that her front door had been opened and closed, and that she could hear walking on the floor below her. Her husband had passed away years prior and she now lived alone, so obviously this wasn't a normal thing. Robin stayed on the phone with the dispatcher the entire time, and confirmed when I got there that she was still hearing someone walking around on the ground floor. She informed them that she was going to hide and then hung up the phone. I had arrived at the same time as another pair of cars in the area, one of which had 2 officers, and so we sent one of them around the back of the house and kept one stationed up front, while me and the last officer went through the front door. With our guns drawn, we quietly opened the front door and crept in. While I began walking around the ground floor clearing rooms, the officer that had gone through the front with me immediately went upstairs in front of the door to clear the floor and make contact with the caller. I skulked around the ground floor listening for any sign of anyone, but when I cleared the first room, I needed to make it known, so I called out that I had. This was going to make the element of surprise non-existent, but it's protocol. I cleared the living room and entered the dining room, still not having heard anything. I cleared the dining room and moved to the kitchen, which too was empty. I looked out the window and motioned to the officer in the back as if to say, "Anything?" To which he replied in the negative. I noticed then that I hadn't heard the officer who'd gone upstairs verbally signify that she'd cleared any rooms. Expecting the worst, I called out to her and ran through the house to the stairs. I ascended the stairs, and when I got to the hallway at the top, the officer was walking back towards me. At the same time, we asked each other why the other hadn't verbally called out that they were clearing rooms, which we both said we had. I then asked if she had made contact with the caller, and she said she hadn't. Confident the officers positioned at the front and back of the house would catch anyone trying to escape during our absence from the ground floor, I told the officer to help me search the top floor again. We checked each room one by one. First the room in its entirety, then the closets of each room. We made it to the back of the hallway and hadn't found her, so we turned around to go look downstairs. We once again searched the entire ground floor, not finding anyone. But when we got to the kitchen, there was a door that I swore hadn't been there when I cleared the kitchen the first time. Nonetheless, I opened it, and it led to the basement. But it wasn't normal. I could only see down maybe 3 steps before darkness completely overtook everything else. I got a strange, overwhelming feeling when I looked into the abyss. It was so purely dark and empty that I felt unadulterated fear. The officer I was clearing the house with was a rookie, and in what I think was an effort to impress a veteran officer, took it upon herself to clear the basement. When Robin had said she went to go hide, she had mentioned that she'd only heard one door open and close. Her front door. She said she knew every sound her house made after living there for 60+ years, and that she was sure the suspect was still on the first floor. The rookie officer clicked on her flashlight and shined it down the stairs, but the darkness stemmed to suck the light away. She descended the creaking stairs into the enveloping black, and not long after reaching the basement floor, I heard her yell out a distinct, "Clear!" I expected her to come back up immediately, but we were there about 5 seconds when I didn't hear anything at all. I then heard the stairs begin creaking in my direction, and sort of half got my gun ready in case whoever was coming out of the darkness wasn't the officer. Indeed, it was the officer, but it was like I was looking at a completely different person. All of the color had drained from her face and her eyes were welled up with tears. Her previously confident posture was now stiff and worrisome. I asked her what was wrong and she didn't respond, so I asked her if the basement was indeed clear, and she shakily shook her head in confirmation. After asking her again what was wrong, she simply rushed out the front of the house. Now confident that the suspect wasn't still in the house, and that Robin had simply had a good enough hiding spot from having lived there so long, I called out for her. I heard her voice call out, "Hello? Who's there?" To which I responded by identifying myself as police. When I walked up the stairs, I found Robin in the first room on the right, in bed, like she'd been there the entire time. Not only that, but she acted like she had no idea what was going on. She claimed that she hadn't called the police, and that she didn't even have a telephone. Nonetheless, I informed her that we'd received a call and that we'd cleared the ground floor, the floor she was on, and the basement, and that she had nothing to worry about. Her response to this sent a chill down my spine. This house doesn't have a basement. At this point, though, I was convinced that this woman more than likely had some kind of dementia, and was more concerned with the fact that she still lived alone. After confirming that the woman was safe and all that, I headed back downstairs to leave. To satisfy my own curiosity, I walked through the dining room back to the kitchen, where I was undoubtedly more confused than I'd ever been. The door to the basement was indeed there, but it didn't lead to the basement at all. It was a pantry. It was lined with shelves of canned and boxed foods, all which was perfectly visible in the moonlight coming through the windows. No stairs. No overwhelming darkness. I went outside and reconvened with the other officers. The partner of the officer that had gone through the house with me asked, "What the fuck happened?" And I replied that in all honesty, I wasn't entirely sure. I went to check on the female officer, but she sat in the passenger seat of their squad car whispering to herself over and over, "Not supposed to be there. Not supposed to see it. Not supposed to be there. Not supposed to see it." I was told that they returned to the station after that call, where she promptly resigned. I have no idea what happened that night, and had more questions than I did when I got there. I don't know who called. I don't know where Robin had been when the top floor was cleared not once, but twice. I don't know how the female officer descended down the stairs to a basement in a house where a basement doesn't exist. I don't know how I had missed the door on my first walkthrough of the house. None of it makes any sense. I've lost a lot of sleep thinking about that night. If you enjoyed this video, do your thing. If you would like to help support the channel, make sure you check out the sponsor button down below. You will get some cool perks out of it, and one of those will be a cool channel badge, another will be early access. And also, if you want the early access for a little cheaper way, you can support me on Patreon, if that's your thing. If not, I'm glad you enjoyed the video regardless. Once again, I want to give a shout out to Nickbotic for letting me narrate his stories that he wrote. If you're looking for more unique stories, make sure you go check out his website down below in the description. I appreciate it, Nick. I will catch you all in the next video. And just remember to watch your back, because you never know who or what is watching you. Bad bye. So I'm curious as to what you all thought of these first creepypastas that I've really put on the channel. Well, first creepypastas that are known creepypastas. You know what I mean. I thought it was a nice twist. I actually really enjoyed it. It gave it a little new creepy aspect to it. You know what I mean? I'm definitely looking forward to doing a lot more different horror creepypasta things. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a nice change, you know? You get some actual outside the box thinking that's somewhat kind of based on like people-ish. I'm not really sure. In all reality, I really don't know what to say about these stories, but the video just does better if it's 20 minutes long in the search results, because then if someone uses a filter that says, "I'm looking for this video, but I only want videos 20 minutes or longer," well, if my video is 20 minutes, then I can show up under that, but I really don't have a story that's like a few minutes short, and I don't want to just throw another one in here. So my wife's like, "Why don't you just talk about the stories like you used to do?" And I said, "That's a great idea, but these were written by someone, so I'm not really sure what I would say about them. You know, the real life scenarios, it's easy to give my input on what I would have done, but it's a little different when you're reading a creepypasta. So I'll just say that I enjoyed them, and it was a nice change of pace." Now, also while I was recording this little bit just talking to you guys, I forgot to plug in my laptop and it completely died, and then it shut down. And then I ended up having to restart it, and there were updates. How's that for a horror story? Almost sounded like I said horror story. Horror story. But the updates are done and now I'm back on, and I was kind of able to continue where I was. What's our timer at? I'm not really even sure because I gotta edit all this down too, so it's probably gonna end up being short. So cue the weird music and the extra long outro. Take care, everybody. Hate me for being honest. Yeah.